They set out on a triumphant campaign, some chasing glory, others chasing money. They come back in plastic bags, some without arms, some without legs, and it is unclear who is luckier. Instead of war, they found a slaughter, and instead of livestock, they became it themselves. They are sent by the thousands into a meat grinder, without purpose and without return. And those who refuse or try to escape face public executions.
Вот она, лесная принцесса.
Fewer and fewer are willing to die voluntarily. Putin needs more and more of them. What has the Russian army become in the fourth year of war? How and why is Putin trying to hide the mass destruction of Russians in the furnace of his insane war? Watch in this special report, To Die on Command. How Russia prepares for a second wave of mobilization. In recent months, Russia has once again been consumed by rumors of a new mobilization. Despite calls from radical pro-war figures to forcibly shave everyone and send them to the army, the Kremlin stays silent. Soldiers remain silent too. Yet ordinary citizens and experts are constantly pushed toward the same conclusion. This time, Putin may not avoid mobilization. In August 2024, Ukrainian offensives in the Kursk region and threats to other border areas triggered full-scale panic. Everyone to arms. A month later, in September 2024, testing began for a unified digital military registry. Panic followed immediately. Now they will reach everyone. At the same time, Putin signed a decree expanding the Russian armed forces by 180,000 troops, bringing the total to 1.5 million. These 180,000 are recruited mainly through contract soldiers, volunteers, and reservists, without officially declaring mobilization.
In the fall of 2022, the State Duma had not yet adopted the full set of laws and regulations needed to forcibly drive large numbers of people into the army. That is why mobilization was announced. Now all of those laws are in place, and new ones keep appearing. There is no longer any need to declare mobilization.
At the same time, pro-Kremlin war correspondents and nationalist commentators are calling for a second wave of mobilization. They cite rising losses, manpower shortages at the front, and the risk of escalation with the West, including long-range weapons for Ukraine.
Russia needs to cover a very long front line, the line of contact stretching from the Kharkiv direction to Kherson. This requires new units and new formations, meaning the replenishment of existing units with mobilized soldiers. Only this can ensure continuity and proper preparation. Yuri Kotenok, Russian war correspondent.
According to their estimates, without new manpower, Russia risks losing the initiative in key directions. Putin has repeatedly denied plans for a new mobilization in public statements.
We use a different tactic. We push the enemy out of territories we need to control. There is no need for mobilization.
Legally, mobilization never ended. It is ongoing, but there has been no real call-up since November 2022. This is political. Mobilization was received extremely negatively by society. The authorities fear another wave, but they are preparing for it.
The first and most obvious way to hide mobilization is through conscription. Russia is expanding the draft system. The State Duma approved year-round conscription. Citizens can now be drafted at any time of year. Men aged 18 to 30 are taken into service.
Conscripts are a separate and especially vulnerable group. From them, the state recruits so-called professional soldiers. In the past, draft offices in Russia often failed to meet recruitment quotas. About 300,000 conscripts are taken each year for one-year service, and draft offices did not always manage to complete all required procedures, from medical examinations to final decisions.
Conscripts are formally not participants in the war. By law, they cannot be sent into combat. In practice, they increasingly become future contract soldiers. Recruitment starts while they are still in service. From the first months, they are promised higher pay, social benefits, and service on Russian territory. Commanders and draft offices actively pressure them to sign contracts. They use every form of coercion. Threats like you will lose your leave or you will not receive your discharge papers. If that does not work, they resort to outright deception.
There have been confirmed cases where command falsified signatures. Contracts were signed without the conscripts knowing. They were sent to war as contract soldiers without their consent.
Заявляю, что не имею желания и отказываюсь от подписания любого вида контракта. Если появится контракт якобы подписанный мной, значит это случилось под психологическим или физическим давлением.
Officially, the authorities explain the new rules as simplifying military registration and boosting defense capability. But amid a prolonged war and mounting losses, year-round conscription looks like preparation for a second mobilization wave. In October, the State Duma passed a new law on reservists. It allows sending them to special assemblies. Reservists can now be used not only in wartime, but also in peacetime. In Russia, this still counts as peace, because officially there is no war.
Reservists are the Armed Forces Reserve. This group includes all men who have served in the Army, as well as those who did not serve, but have turned 30. They remain in the reserve until the age of 55. There are very many such people in Russia, an estimated 20 to 25 million. The exact number is unknown.
The law briefly defines the purpose of these special assemblies. Their goal is the protection of critical infrastructure and essential facilities. No specific list of these sites is provided.
The country faces periodic drone attacks, including on critical facilities. Protecting them is an important state task.
An even more important task is to pull as many reservists as possible into these assemblies. Put them in uniform. Isolate them. Then the same mechanism used on conscripts begins to work. There is no need to declare mobilization.
As the law puts it, critical infrastructure facilities. But in reality, these people can also be used in the war. Right now, in recruitment ads I have seen in regional groups, they stress very clearly that you will not take part in the so-called special operation. No one will send you to war, just guarding critical infrastructure. But if you look at the law itself, the authorities are solving a different task. They gather large numbers of men. They send them to special training camps. Maybe around 50% will guard oil depots, but nothing stops them from forcing the other 50% into military contracts using methods they have relied on for years: threats, intimidation, deception, and sometimes torture.
But there is one group that will never be sent as cannon fodder: the Federal Protective Service of the Russian Federation. This structure is legally responsible for the personal protection of the Russian president, top officials, and state-protected sites. It is safe to assume that alongside the FSO, the same level of immunity applies to senior officials and, for the most part, employees of security agencies that directly protect the regime and special services, with access to classified information and secure communications.
They are kept at a distance. They have their own tasks and are politically protected. It is hard to imagine them being sent anywhere to perform real military duties. Among other groups, I would single out certain members of volunteer units. Russia has many such formations. Contracts there are signed not for an unlimited period, but for 6 or 12 months. Quite often, these units are created essentially for promotion. Promotion of military service, promotion of participation in the war. Media figures come there, officials come, sometimes activists. They pose for photos in clean uniforms with weapons in their hands. Far from the front line, 1 or 2 or 300 kilometers from combat. There is a lot written about this. Even Russian deserters confirm it. These people come to promote themselves, to take pictures. In reality, they do not take part in any fighting, and of course they earn the status of so-called combat veterans, so they can later say that they were participants in the special operation.
So what awaits the so-called new recruits on the battlefield? First, the length of their deployment. For most, it lasts 1 to 2 weeks. They are killed or become severely wounded under Ukrainian drone strikes, mortars, or artillery. According to the spokesperson of Ukraine's National Guard, Ruslan Muzychuk, Russian losses during assaults sometimes reach 2,000 people per day. What chance of survival can there be when a recruit's training lasts only 10 to 14 days in rear camps? It includes basic weapons handling, basic medical skills, and simple squad drills. There are no company or battalion-level exercises, no combat coordination, no adaptation to real conditions. This poorly prepared force is then loaded onto trains and sent to Ukraine.
Some trained for 1 week, some for 2, some for 3. They threw us into the hardest sectors. Out of 100%, roughly 90% died. Survival was 10 to 15% at best.
New recruits are thrown into combat almost immediately in the deadliest sectors. Early in the war, these were known as meat grinder assaults.
The guys were wiped out. There are more wounded, even more dead. Only 4 of us are still left.
How many people we lost? From my platoon, almost no one is left. They wiped out the entire company, 70 men. Only a few survived.
Out of 30 people taken from our unit, 20 are already gone. There are no supplies for the wounded, no ammunition delivery, no medical aid, no food, no water. We drink from puddles, melt snow when there is any.
They send us straight to slaughter. No reconnaissance or false intelligence, no artillery support, 1 rifle and 4 grenades to take fortified Ukrainian positions, with no backing from Russia, no equipment.
These soldiers say they buy drones, radios, food, water, medicine, and gear themselves. Humanitarian aid never reaches them. It ends up for sale in stores. Refusing orders here means death.
If anyone turns back, we will shoot them ourselves. Move only forward.
The situation for wounded soldiers is just as grim. This video was found by Ukrainian troops on the phone of a killed Russian soldier. He says he is wounded and cannot escape the battlefield. Another survivor said he was the only one left from his assault group with a leg wound. He amputated his own leg with a knife. He was found by chance 17 days later.
I am shot, surviving as best I can, trying to crawl out.
Very quickly, it becomes clear that commanders do not care about a soldier's qualification if they need to report captured territory. Most die obediently. Only a few try to survive by surrendering. Like this Russian soldier sent into an assault by deception.
My military ID lists me as a tank gunner operator, but they threw me into an assault. I would rather go to prison than go back.
The final shock is soldiers limping into battle on crutches. They were even grouped into so-called cripple regiments, units made up of wounded soldiers who were not discharged, not sent to rear units. After so-called recovery with amputations, blindness, or concussions, they were sent back to the front to defend the motherland.
They dispose of these men to avoid paying them. Compensation is paid only if there is a body. No body means no payment. The missing in action can even be written off as deserters. Again, no payments. There is another key point. Russia's approach to war is purely task-based. Command gives an order to advance 100 meters into Ukrainian positions. How many troops it costs does not matter. They push and push people forward until someone gets there and holds the line. Whether 100, 200, or 500 die on the way does not interest them. They report that they entered the tree line. They get the order to move further, wave after wave.
These assaults became widespread in late November 2023, when Russia's defense ministry proposed simplifying medical screenings for conscription. Citing combat experience, military officials removed from the list conditions they claimed did not seriously interfere with service. By 2025, this practice became the norm. If you are not killed, you keep fighting. The Russian army also uses an internal practice called zeroing out. This means forcing soldiers into especially deadly assaults and missions with extreme risk. They zero out those who cause problems, try to defend their rights, or report abuses in the unit. If a soldier refuses an order that means zeroing, he faces violence or can be killed by his own commanders.
They drag him to a tree, tape his arms and legs, tie him so he cannot run. From 5 or 10 meters, they shoot him point blank. Then, they cut him loose and throw him into a pit. This is how it usually happens. If you didn't follow an order, did not go where you were told, this is what they do to you there.
Information about what really happens in the Russian army keeps leaking out. Fewer people remain who do not know. At the same time, economic problems and a sharp cut in payments to contract soldiers, from 2 or 3 million rubles to 800,000, reduce the number of those willing to sell themselves. What happens if Putin gives in to the generals and turbo-patriots and still announces mobilization? In the autumn of 2022, the partial mobilization caused a mass exodus from Russia. According to the Russia Analytical Center, between 600,000 and 1 million people left the country. Borders with Kazakhstan, Georgia, and Finland saw queues stretching for many kilometers.
If a decision on a new mobilization is made, the scenario may repeat itself, although on a smaller scale. Leaving the country has become harder, but people now have experience, contacts, and roots. Dmitro Khrushchevsky, migration expert.
According to the Levada Center, anxiety about a possible draft remains high. More than 60% of men of draft age say that, if they can, they will try to avoid combat.
Society today is not ready for open protests, but it knows how to avoid direct confrontation with the state. The main response will be individual evasion, leaving the country, claiming illness, obtaining fake certificates, relocating to remote regions. Yekaterina Shulman, political scientist.
Economists warn that a new mobilization will deepen the labor shortage in industry and construction. Regional businesses will feel this most.
Any new draft wave will hit the economy harder than it hits the front. Sectors already suffering from labor shortages will simply stop. For businesses, this will signal the need to scale back investment. Alexandra Izakova, analyst.
Experts do not expect mass street protests, but the state risks not only a shortage of manpower for the army, it also risks growing apathy and distrust inside the country. According to the UK Ministry of Defense, Russia can bring in 25,000 to 30,000 new soldiers a month. At the same time, losses reach 25,000 to 40,000 people a month, killed and wounded.
They compensate for losses with new call-ups, but this does not increase the overall size of the army. It only keeps it at the minimum level needed to hold the front. They have almost no reserve for an offensive. Oleg Zhdanov, military analyst.
The Ukrainian Center of National Resistance estimates Russia's mobilization reserve at about 20 to 25 million people. But in practice, they can train and equip only 500 to 600,000 a year.
Every mobilized man means one less worker, one less taxpayer, one less unit of economic capacity. The system is running at its limit, and it cannot sustain the front indefinitely. Kirilo Rohov, economic analyst.
Experts believe that even if current hidden mobilization continues, Russia can keep its troop numbers for another 6 to 9 months, but without strategic gains. Any increase in mobilization will trigger new internal risks, growing discontent, economic decline, and a new wave of people fleeing abroad.
If political decisions are made, the state will be able to carry them out. But that will have unpredictable consequences. It can trigger long-term processes dangerous for the regime. People may turn away, and the authorities feel this and fear it. Still, if needed, they will do it. Technically, they can mobilize now, and people will still go. There will be more problems. The laws have become much harsher. Resistance will be harder, but options remain. It is very hard to predict how this will play out in the long run, but the behavior of draft offices shows one thing: they are getting ready.
Putin has turned Russia into his personal private army called the Russian Federation. In this crude but still huge war machine, every Russian, from teenager to pensioner, is no longer a person, but a resource, a shield, cannon fodder, or a hostage. And yet, the Kremlin dictator still avoids declaring full mobilization. He seems to sense that his carefully built system can spin out of control. That is why mobilization stays in the shadows, and thousands more will continue to be pulled into a criminal army through lies and coercion. But with each passing day, more people reach the same conclusion. It is better to lose a few years to prison than lose an entire life in a meat assault. Marina Nesterova, Special Report.